Welcome to Part 1 of Module 2, Empowering Individuals. Enjoy.
Welcome back, everyone. Now we're going to talk about how you empower individuals and how that's different from empowering teams. So, Michael, hello again.
Hello there.
Let's talk about Frank and how you and Frank's wife did some empowering with him.
Okay, as long as you remember that you can only support someone to empower themselves. They have to do the work. We cannot do it for them, but we can give them all kinds of support. Anyway, the essence of what we did was to continually walk Frank through our 8 disciplines that we've covered in the 8 courses that we have already covered throughout this program. So let's start off with the big one, conscious use of self, which really underlies all of the other 8 disciplines. So conscious use of self is about being a choice regarding intention and impact, regarding connection, and regarding ego management. Let's talk about Frank's intention. Frank's initial intention was to simply get the work done the best way that he could, which given his belief system, meant that he had to do it all, which really boosted his ego a good bit. But as we began to walk him through his ego issues, he began to let some of those things go and could look more at his intention being, we need to get the work done at the highest level of productivity and efficiency that we could. And then he could look to see if he was making that impact or not. And he began to see that he could only do that through higher quality connections with the people who report to him. So that was critical underlying everything.
So that's the first one, conscious use of self, key to everything that we do.
Amen. Second one, and probably the hardest one, is human systems thinking. That Frank had to begin to honor his contribution to whatever was going on. So things were not working out very well, and he had to see what he was doing that was contributing to that, since we are always making a contribution to whatever is going on, whether we like it or not. That one was particularly difficult for him, and that's kind of why it took us several months to help him work through that. Support systems was critical because Frank by himself would never have gotten there. Fortunately, his wife, his primary support system, through a lot of tough love, finally got him to get some support from me. Between the two of us, that made a huge difference. And then we could begin to get Frank to see that he needed his direct reports to be a core part of his support system, because that was really what was going to make him work. And of course, contracting was critical. How do I say this? First, his wife got him to contract with her that he was going to do something so that he would not continue to burn himself out. From that, Frank had to contract with me. From there, I supported Frank in contracting with his direct reports so that they could really become a cohesive team. We got Frank to begin to check for sound and current data. Was everybody in his team really incapable of getting things done as well as he could? Now, of course, it turned out that he had several team members who could do several things much better than Frank could. Again, Frank had to swallow a little more ego with that one. Feedback came into play because now that Frank had a focus on having an organization that was both efficient and productive, he could begin to check to see if the feedback was there, telling him that he was on target. And of course, he could now check with the systemic feedback, which had been telling him that what he was doing wasn't working. And now the feedback could begin to say, yeah, Frank, we think you're on target now. All that leads into the number 7, shifting one's power dynamics rather than the win-lose game that Frank was playing, where, at least in his mind, he was the winner and all of his direct reports, being not as smart as he was, being losers. But like everything else that is playing win-lose, unless it's for your direct survival, win-lose turns into lose-lose. And Frank was losing, his team was losing, his wife was beginning to see that she was losing, and she wanted to put an end to that. So, and of course, the last one and the most difficult one, can we learn from people who are different than us? Can we begin to drop some of those judgments where we want to insist that we're smarter than so-and-so, and begin to learn from these people that actually you have hired to help do the work?
So, Michael, that is an awful lot to remember. I mean, it's actually making me dizzy to think about all those things. Is there a way that we can simplify this?
Well, yes, there is. So, this course, in a very real sense, is a review of all of the other principles that we've covered. But to just hone it down to ways that we can speak about those principles that are directly applicable to supporting the empowerment of someone. Yes, we've got a way to do that. So there are 8. And so first one, clarify goals as specific outcomes. So often people are struggling with how to get something done because they really aren't clear enough about what the goal is. Let's take Frank. Frank had this goal of getting the work done. Now, as we really began to clarify that goal, it was really getting the work done in ways that are more efficient, more productive, without burning him out. Now, that was a major shift that really allowed for us to begin to entertain a lot of different ways that we might achieve that specific outcome. So,
Yeah, I mean, I think when I think about that, it's sort of like, what are you trying to achieve? So get the work done. And how are you trying, like, what's the performance that's required to get you to that goal? And it's without getting burnt out in Frank's case. So it's like, I think about it as more writing the objectives as more of a performance objective than just a straight up, I need to get more work, or I need to get this, or I need to do that.
one of the ways that folks can hear that is, how will you know when you've gotten there? So that's another way of saying outcome statements and so on like that. Okay. The second one is check for any beliefs that may be getting in the way of him getting to where he wanted to go, such as Frank's notion that he's the only one smart enough to do all this. Now, so I said, Frank, tell me how you know that. And Frank would go there, here, and go there. So, Frank, you hired all these guys and 3 ladies, and you know everything they know. They went, well, of course not. And then we began to shift that belief system to again get some opening there. so that he could begin to entertain. Maybe his people could actually be useful to him. Imagine that. Yes.
So get specific about the goals, get sound and current data, and to sort of get to your underlying beliefs about getting to those goals.
Yes.
And in Frank's case, that was the eight people that he hired that he wasn't really using. So
right,
some of the
because they really wouldn't do it right.
right.
So Frank, why'd you hire him in the first place? You know, right? And as I challenged him around those kinds of issues, things began to loosen up. Okay, so next step, Frank, what would you need to feel more empowered in terms of you working less and your people working more? He was kind of stumped on that one, so I kind of moved on to number 4. So Frank, you were of the school that you were damned if you do and damned if you don't. That if you let your people do the work, they would screw it up. But if you did the work, then you were going to have a heart attack and lose your wife. So we need to search for a wider range of choices. And Frank actually got to, well, okay, I guess I need to use these people that I hire. And maybe they're not so bad after all, because after all, I did hire them and I'm a pretty smart guy. Oh, of course, Frank, of course. Okay, next one. Frank, what would be the specific course of action that you would need to take to move toward your goal? And he thought about that. Well, I think I need to talk to each one of my direct reports and begin to really get a better handle on what they know and don't know. And I said, Frank, that's a good thought. Think also about pulling them together as a group, because the collective mind that they have, along with yours, it is so much more brighter than you and one of your people together. So consider that we'll do a team building exercise where the team with you figures out how the work can actually get done in this way that is both efficient, effective, and without burdening you as much as it has. Then that actually began to make sense to him. Okay, Frank, what kind of support system would you need to keep going with this? Yeah, I'm here now to get you going. But after I'm gone, yeah, you can call me every now and then and I'll support you, but you need a regular support system, because you're going to forget all the stuff we've talked about unless you've got support to help you think through this. And he just went, I don't have the faintest idea. Well, Frank, how about the folks that you just talked about? So you mean these people who report to me? Well, yeah. Aren't they there to support you? Well, I never really thought about it that way. So that's, I mean, won't, So and he really was stumbling with this one. And he said, won't I seem weak if I need their help to remember this stuff? I said, Frank, have you ever had a boss ask you for help He said, yeah. Well, what did you think of that, boss? Well, I thought that was really great. I mean, it let me shine, and I felt that it was really helpful. So, Frank, you don't think that they're going to think the same thing? I said, really hadn't thought about that. That's going to be really
Michael,
uncomfortable, is what he said.
Yeah, I think one of the things, as you're talking, the thing that comes to mind is this is, in the sense, this list of questions that you need to ask yourself. So you just talked about what actions can you take, or can the person trying to make the change or empower others take to move them towards their goal? What kind of support system do you need is the one we just finished talking about. And, can you think about the people you're working with as a support system? I mean, that's why they're there, especially as a leader. And even some of the earlier ones that, what are the specific goals and outcomes in terms of, like you can phrase all of these as questions. So that might be a useful thing for people to do.
I think that's great. In fact, that if phrased that way, that is what will be in the handout that they already have.
Perfect.
All right. Now, the next one is, Frank, what can you do? No, Frank, what will be the specific next steps you will take? And you're going to have to give me a time and a place and a who. So, what is your specific next step? And he was clear. He said, I will take the rest of this week and talk to each of my people individually. They'll all be done by the end of the week. And the following week, if you are here still, we want to have a group meeting. I said, okay, that works. Then the final step is pretty easy. Frank, does this feel good to you? Did you feel like this is really going to work? And Frank said, it's really different from any way I've ever operated, but it does feel good. It feels like it's going to lift a burden off of me. So he said, yes. And I said, Frank, let's just go do it. And that's what we did.
So, I'm just going to do a really, really quick recap. So get specific about the outcomes is the first thing that Frank did with his people. Then check to see any beliefs that you as a leader have. And is that really, that's getting in the way, and is that based on sound and current data? One of his hindering beliefs was these people can't do the job right. Only I can do the job right. And so once he got past, it took a while to get past that. And then really inquire with his people on what they need to feel more empowered. Is that right? The third point, inquire what they would need to feel more empowered. Are you talking about what Frank needs to feel more empowered?
What Frank needs.
Oh, so inquire, what do you as a leader need to feel more empowered? And then, and expand your scope, expand your aperture, get beyond like, damned if I do, damned if I don't. And then think through what actions can you move towards our goal? What kind of support system do you need? And, what are specific next steps? So like, the, specific actionable steps that you can take, and when will you do them by? And will it work? Is this going to achieve the desired outcome?
It's more like, do you feel good about this?
Okay.
All
right. So let's just go back to, and then just recap, how is empowering individuals different from empowering teams?
Well, actually it's very different. The focus is different. When we focus on empowering a team, the focus is on creating a set of behavioral norms for the entire human system. What I find fascinating is that as a group is empowered, and empowering group norms are established, the team members begin to feel empowered as well because of the synergy that, because of the positive synergy that can bring about. Working with an individual is different. With an individual, we need to support them to really discover their range of energy sponges and begin to make conscious choices about what they believe and their intentions and impact and so on.
I think, as you're talking, I think what comes to mind for me, Michael, is that empowering individuals is really about using a lot of the principles we learned around conscious use of self, whereas empowering teams is using the principles we learned about human systems. And that's really the main difference. One is inwardly focused, one is creating an environment where this team can really feel empowered and setting these group norms and behaviors that'll really enable that system to accomplish what it needs to accomplish in a positive way.
That is well stated. I like the way you said that. Yeah.
Okay.
It's kind of with the team, we want to build consciousness into the group norms. That's great.
Mm-hmm. So what else do we need to know about supporting the empowerment of others?
Yeah, there are probably a few useful thoughts that we can take a look at. Probably the most important one is, if you don't believe in the person that you want to support their empowerment, you won't do a very good job of that. You have to genuinely believe in their intrinsic ability and their intrinsic worthiness. If you've got negative judgments about any part of them, you will not do a good job of empowering them. Negative judgments inhibit any kind of support that we might want to offer, because people pick up on negative judgments and we may try to BS our way through it. It doesn't work. It doesn't work. Second one is help them invent their own solutions. Intend to support them to do their own thinking. We are so prone to be problem solvers and to help them solve the problem. No, we need to help them solve their own problem. That's why we are helping them get a handle on their conscious use of self. Now, it's okay to offer suggestions, but only as options for them to explore, and we need to give priority to their ideas and their trains of thought. Our thoughts are secondary. Now, given that on automatic, we are very prone to want to give them all kinds of advice. You just need to be conscious about what you're doing there. The focus is on getting them to solve their own problems. Sometimes they come up with, well, I don't know. Well, then I just rely on what my mother would tell me when I'd say to her as a kid, I don't know. She said, well, Michael, how would you find out? And they go, oh, okay. but it's about putting the impetus back on them rather than taking it on and giving them a good idea about what they might do. If they're really going.
Well, I was going to say that, what really, if I'm listening to you speak and I'm like, it really there's two strong things that come out for me in these points that you made. One is the first point, and a very strong one, you've got to believe in your people, that's, that they're worth the effort. Number one. that they're not stupider than you, that they're not irrelevant, that they're not, they should just obey you. You have to believe in them as humans. So, number one.
Or
And
even if you think they're a jerk, because some people we think, oh, they're smart, but they're jerks. We will not empower somebody. We won't do a good job of supporting them past that jerk judgment. Okay.
right.
Go on. Mhm.
And then and a lot of what you said in like helping people invent their own solutions, getting them to explore options, what to do with when they say I don't know, ask them how they would find out, and just helping them get past the stuck point. Those are all about, when I hear that, I think all of those, I'm like, oh, I've heard the phrase, and maybe other people have heard this phrase about don't put the monkey on your back. So this idea that, and I'm not exactly sure where this comes from, but the idea that if you take the problem and you offer the solution, you're actually owning the problem, and you want them to own the problem or the issue or the challenge. And so you're always saying, well, what would you do? How would you empower? And so that's the hard part about it, is like you can't pedal a kid's bike for them if you're teaching them how to ride a bike. They can only do that for themselves. So.
And so even for us who want to support their empowerment, we've got to stay conscious about how we are using ourselves. Perfect. Final thought about this. Often people just get stuck in the past. And I tried this and it didn't work. I tried that and it didn't work. Or if I do this, it's just going to make it worse. They're just stuck. Well, they're just stuck. The thing to do then is help them to focus on what might be done now. We are not in the past and we're not in the future. In fact, we never are. What can we do now? Let's put aside what happened in the past. Let's put aside what you think might happen in the future. What could be useful to do right now? And often you really have to be, you have to be persistent with them about this. Do that, and you'll be in great shape.
Great. Well, that's a lot of tips that you have there on empowering individuals. And I'm glad that there'll be a handout to go with that, because there's a lot to remember. So I think we're ready to move on to the final phase of this module, which is an exercise.